Hey, good morning. It is February 8th, 2018. My name is Jeff Fritz, and welcome back to the stream. This is Fritz and Friends, I believe is what I'm calling this, and we're going to keep running with that, I think. Big day. I've got a guest. I'm excited to have a guest on the stream today. And there's also a little parade going on in my hometown here, but I'm more excited to be here on stream, writing some code with some friends. But my guest today, oh my gosh, look at all this. I'm getting triple and quadruple entries here on Restream. That's really wacky. Quad chat announcement, look at that. You know what, and it looks like it's coming in from Mixer. Dual Jones 92. Hey, good to see you. Let me introduce my guest here. Gosh, let me bring him on. And my guest today is Brendan Enrick. Hey, Brendan. So let me read off Brendan's bio here. Brendan is an ASP insider, speaker, and author of online courses. He's a proponent of agile and software craftsmanship methodologies, focusing primarily within the .NET and C# communities. Brendan's the chief content officer at deviq.com, and in addition to promoting the software development community, he's the vice president of his local board gaming organization, the Board Gamers of Greater Akron, or BOGA, which allows him to also promote gaming locally in Northeast Ohio. Thanks so much for joining me, Brendan. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for the intro. It's good to be here. And hello, everyone.
Hello. And yeah, Mixer is misbehaving a little bit out there, it looks like. We're getting quad entries coming in, which is either really cool or a pain in the neck.
Everybody on Mixer's just really hyped up.
They are. It's amazing out there on Mixer. Let me see if I can take a look. Yeah, Restream is having some issues with folks coming over from Mixer. That's neat. Let's see if we can push back on our friends at Restream. Wow. That's kind of neat. Let's see. I'm going to send a tweet out. At Restream, I'm getting quad entries on my Restream chat from Mixer. Help? There we go. Let's see what they say. All right, but we're not here to try and fix Restream. We're gonna talk a little bit about unit testing. Now, I've been trying to do test first types of development, and I'm not the best at structuring these things. But Brendan, you and your team over at DevIQ and some of the consulting groups that you've worked for previously, you've got some amazing discipline around unit testing and structure. And please, can you help me?
Yep. That is a common problem. Discipline to actually write unit tests is one of the toughest things that you'll run into among pretty much any dev team anywhere. So
it's interesting to me. I used to work with some folks who said their unit test was pressing F5. They would build their application and it works, ship it.
Oh yeah.
It's like I don't think you understand how that works.
Yeah, see, the funny thing is, like, even on the small scale, even when you're just making like little changes, it's like the number of times that you'll run your application and notice a problem. It's like, you could have done that in like 5 seconds without even looking at anything if you just had a test on that, right? Like, I mean, I don't know about you, but I am a normal person. I make mistakes all the time, and I'd rather have something there to catch it. So,
absolutely, yeah, and what kills me and what really got me to embrace the unit testing practice was when I started getting the same help tickets open again and again and again. This feature's broken again. Jeff, something happened. This feature's broken again. And it was, I thought I fixed that previously, and somewhere it got dropped in source control. And I wanted to build automated tests to pin that help desk fix, to pin that fix that I already wrote, so that the next time the application is built, I know that the test ran and verifies that my fix is still in place.
Yep. So that's actually one of my favorite things when you have a legacy code base, is just starting off, just do regression tests, which is what those are called. It's like it's put a vice on this, say, hey, I fixed this thing. I'm going to make sure that this bug never comes back. And the other nice thing I like about that is if you wrote the test first, you confirmed what the bug was. Because sometimes I'm like, I think I know what this is. I'll go and I write a test for it, and my test will pass. I'm like, ooh, that wasn't really the problem. And I'm like, and then I iterate on the test a few times. I'm like, oh, that was the issue. And then once I've got it, I can lock it away and make sure it doesn't come up again.
So there's a key thing there that I try to embrace that you skipped over quickly, is that when you write the test, it's not a good test until it fails on your existing code. Fix your code. And there's that red-green refactor bit, right? You write the test to show something that's broken.
Yes,
Make the test, change your code so the test works. Don't change your test, change your code, and then go and do any refactoring, keeping it green.
Yep, once you confirm that the test failed for the right reason also, because you want to look at the results of like why it failed and what you actually got there. Because one of the worst things when you're doing stuff, when you expect that test to go red and it goes green, it's like, whoop, hang on. Like, must have done my test wrong. This should have failed. I thought I found, So a lot of people think we're crazy when we say red-green refactor, because it's like, wait, write the failing one first? It's like, no. That's the only way I can confirm that it can fail.
So I asked you on specifically to help me with some of the organization. I'm starting to get my Stream Tools project. It's .NET Core, and it's growing in size, and I feel like my tests are a little disorganized. I could improve their structure. We've had some folks suggest using auto fixture, and I need some help. So I'm going to run over to the code here, and let's start taking a look at what we have. Hey, look at that. And I'm still getting that quad entry from Mixer. Skyhoshi says, what about testing for the failure? Testing for the red? What do you mean by that, Skyhoshi?
So you mean testing a case where the system is supposed to have a failure? Because I will say that you do want to test all those different conditions of things like, I want to make sure that my code actually, does this failing case. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Testing when it's supposed to fail.
Right. If you're testing when it's supposed to fail, then your test should pass that your code failed. That's weird.
Yes.
All right. Let me resize my Visual Studio here a little bit, because it is.
The quick answer there is that yes, you do want to test for those. And if you're talking about, say, an exceptional case where something blows up and goes wrong, in those cases, all the different testing frameworks have ways of expecting that exceptions are thrown. So you can either sometimes do that on the test level, or sometimes do that on specific calls, depending on the framework you're using. But the idea with all of them is make sure that I actually threw this exception. Yes, we are all exceptional cases. Exceptional people here. All of us.
Very exceptional. Yes, every one of us. Oh, and it looks like Mixer isn't repeating those now. All right. It didn't repeat Skyhoshi and Jobun 4 times that time. Maybe somebody
hope that it went away.
Yeah, maybe somebody wrote a good test.
I mean, that is an important unit test. Make sure that this message I send only appears once instead of 4 times. Never mind.
No. And to be clear, I've got Restream open on another machine over here, and I'm getting quad entries over there from Mixer. You jinxed it. Yes, that's right, playing with scissors. I did. I jinxed it. It's all my fault.
Is it actually doing the quad on Mixer itself, or is it when Restream grabs it?
I think it's... Well, let's take a look. Needs more testing. Oh, boy. No, it's not on Mixer. Okay.
Okay, so it's just Restream that's doing it, or some connection between them. Yeah. So it's an integration test that we need, not a unit test.
There you go. Well, that's fun. Yuck. Yeah, they should write some... Well, that's an integration test we're talking about, right? We're going to test the boundary of our code and somebody else's code. Oh, Dewey Jones 92. Thanks so much for the follow. We appreciate you joining us this morning. But yeah, Twitch is echoing out to restream just fine. I'm just going to check my configuration over here, make sure that how I have restream configured is, yeah. From my side, it looks okay. And we've got 50 folks on watching us. So I don't know what to say. Works on Chrome, works on Twitch, ship it. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. Nope, I'm
Yeah, that's probably the case.
not getting anything coming back from Restream. Alright, we'll just limp along. Set mixer.quad messages to false. There we go. That's what it is.
Yeah,
All right.
specific mixer setting.
Sure. Alright, so the first question I have for you, Brendan, and what I'm kind of struggling with here is with regards to my unit test that I have here, let me close out some of these other files that I was working on, is that when I look at my project here, I have first off, I named my project test. I didn't want to name it fritz.test.streamtools or fritz.streamtools.test. What do you name your unit test so that it kind of lines up?
So what I often do is, and it depends on the complexity of the project. For something that's probably as simple as this is going to be, what I usually do is I just make a project called unit tests, and I make it plural, and I call it that. Now, I might configure it with the namespace and the DLL it creates to say something like fritz.streamtools.unittests or something like that. But I don't usually like it as much on the namespace because I like that to be shorter so that when I'm reading it.
Right.
So,
okay. So and quick shout out, thank you, Fierce Kittens, for the hosting there. Don't know why it didn't appear on my event list. The widgets are just breaking all over the place here, I tell you. I agree with you on naming the project, right? And that was my first impulse, was I wanted to name my unit test project fritz.streamtools.tests or unit tests. But let me just ask, if I add, let me just add a class to this, right? And I'll just call this, dummy fixture, right? Just to put something out here.
Yep.
And what I run into is if I change my namespace, right, to Fritz, Stream Tools, unit tests, then when I'm actually referring to something that's inside Fritz.streamtools, right?
Yep. That's why what I was saying is that unless you are working in a project where you specifically need to have a difference for this, what I would do is not put it in that namespace. And there's actually an alternate reason. So, because you're doing fritz.streamtools. And then you find the stuff that's not within test, which is kind of dangerous because you don't want to reference, the real thing when you're in the testing side unless you intend to. But the one change I would make aside from that is, I should say the one problem I would mention aside from that, bring up your test explorer really quickly. I just want to see what those look like down there.
Sure. So here's my test explorer. Let me move this so we can all see it.
So the relevant information that we want to read on this test explorer that he's bringing up here, you'll notice it doesn't really start until we say stream service dot follower count by it's not until the middle that we actually care about reading. So the first words, the test and the services, like we might care about that, but probably we want that hidden away. Now, there are a couple of things that we can do to help with that. One of them is some different structuring of the way it's displayed, so it nests a little bit better.
Oh, yeah.
But then, additionally, if we chop the name shorter, we can avoid that. So because we're in here and this never gets deployed, it doesn't really matter what the name of your testing namespace is.
Right.
So you don't really need the Fritz on the beginning.
Sure.
So in a more complex project, so this is why I mentioned it, if you were needing to separate out the unit tests that referenced one project from the ones that referenced another, so if your solution was large, you might do a stream tools unit test, and then you might also have, like the XYZ unit test project. So if you have these separate things, you might do that. In your case, we only have one. So I would just chop it to unit tests.
So the way I have it now, with it just being test,
yep,
is
basic.
is okay for now. But if there was something else hanging out here, you know, if we had, if we put our stream services into a different library, we would test that library with a namespace that looks like this.
Yes, and what you could do actually, if you wanted to do it differently, is get rid of the dot. And then you won't run into those problems, because you got to remember, you're really just making stream services tests. That dot convention is just something we do within the .NET community because we want to be able to have that auto completion of like, oh, these are in the same namespace. So even though they're across libraries or something, but here we don't do that because we're not referencing anything in our testing project outside of that project itself.
Okay, and then when I'm inside here, I can still say fritz.streamtools, and I'm okay. If this was structured like this, right? I would still be able to do fritz dot, and then I can see my test next to that.
Yep, exactly.
So, gosh, let's even do this, right? And then, oh, forgot the word tools. And then they actually line up really nicely right next to each other, just as you're saying. I haven't broken or made it difficult for me to go and find things.
Yep.
All that I've done is drop the period, so it doesn't kind of chain together like that. Okay.
Yep.
Mythgar in the chat room, would it make sense to name the project fritz.streamtools.unittests, but change the default namespace on the project to unit tests? That works too.
Yeah. So playing with what the project name is, what the folder name is, what the assembly version, and what the namespace is, I actually mess with all of those. I like short project names so that they are nice and easy to read in that list on the left, and my Solution Explorer stays, you know, small. So like, I actually like that the project name is test. I might call it unit test only because I like having the separation between the unit tests and the integration tests, because the integration tests sometimes have extra dependencies. And I don't want to ever accidentally use one of those dependencies in a unit test.
Okay. Okay, so let's do that. Let's rename the project then to unit test.
Yep, and get rid of our dummy fixture. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I will call this unit test, and you like to make it plural.
Yeah, I like to make it plural because it's, you know, it's going to be a group of these things.
Okay.
It's a namespace, essentially.
So I'm going to do a properties on that so I can take a look. My default namespace changed. Good.
Yep.
I didn't think it automatically reset that for me. I'm actually kind of happy to see that. Let me go open one of these, and now where I have namespace test, I'm going to do a find and replace across the entire solution.
So before we do that, do we want to decide what we want our new default namespace to be?
You don't want it to just be unit tests?
We could, but we were discussing doing like stream tools tests.
Sure, let's do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So fritz.streamtools tests, like that.
I'd drop the fritz off the beginning.
Really?
Yeah, so the reason why is you're not going to send this anywhere.
Okay.
And it's just going to add an extra, that's going to be on everything. So it's just an extra layer when you're looking at the results. So remember how I mentioned that when we're looking at the tests, we were looking all the way to the middle before there was anything of value. So let's chop the fritz off the beginning, and that'll
all right.
make it a little easier.
So Joe Bunn saying, just tested Restream.io with my own Mixer channel, and it's fine for him. What did we do? So I'm gonna, yeah, that's what I'm thinking here. So,
I'll refresh.
Yeah, I'm refreshing my web page that I have it loaded in also. Somebody in Mixer say hello.
Yeah, see, the problem is someone successfully sending in a lone message doesn't tell us the problem's gone. Because we've gotten some singles.
We have gotten some singles. I think Brendan just said Fritz has no value. Hey!
I did sort of say that. I did.
Let's see here. So, the question from Shane was, did it rename the project file? No, well, it did rename it. We renamed it from test to unit test, and it did rename the CS proj. Look at that. So it worked for Joe Bond once, and then it comes back now with 4. Let's just go play Fortnite.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
The one thing it doesn't do when you do that rename is it won't get the project folder for you,
Right.
which is one of the things that kills me when you do that. That's the one piece you got to do manually still.
Yeah. All right. So let's unload this. Right. And actually, I probably want
Yep.
to remove it altogether, don't I?
Yep, just remove it. Sometimes what I do is I just go edit the solution file, but do it however you want.
Hang on. Editing the solution file. That's like, my gosh, you're playing with fire when you want to edit the solution file.
I'm a horrible person sometimes.
So
I'm literally putting in a word and a backslash. Like,
oh, I thought you could drag and drop those into the solution. There, I need to put that in as a feature request. I want to be able to drag and drop projects into Solution Explorer.
that'd be really nice, actually.
I know, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to this one, there, this project. There we go. Now, let me ask you, do you put your test projects into a test solution folder?
Not unless I have a large project.
Okay. All right, I see where you're going. So you
Yeah.
have all of your application projects sitting next to each other, and then you have all your tests hiding next to each other in a test folder.
Yeah, I do that if I have a whole bunch, because like here it's like, okay, we have what, 4 top level entities? Meh.
And one of them's Docker Compose, right? It's like
Yeah.
meh, right? I mean,
There's-
my editor config is over here. All right,
Yeah. There's not much clutter. Like, I can shrink down that Solution Explorer as small as I want, and I can still see, pretty much what I need.
4 is pretty good. Now, your biggest solutions you've seen are how many projects?
Oh, I've seen some with like hundreds, but I've worked with some companies doing some insane things before. Let me tell you, Visual Studio doesn't run so well at that.
No. Let me tell you, when I was running Nougat, folks that had a couple hundred projects got very upset that their Nougat restores took a long time.
Yep.
Shane asks, in a large project, do you write a monolith test unit test project or individual test projects for each project?
I break all those up. So I make sure when I'm in one of those large ones that they are cut at lines that make sense. So usually when you're in one of those monolith applications, there are some logical groupings that have already been made. So most of the time in those, it's like, oh, this is the section, that has to do with, I'll say the user management site, and then we've also got over here's the analytics portion of the application, and so each one of those has separate sets of tests. So I usually don't like one per project because that gets a little crazy, but you might do logical groupings of projects that make sense. I've never been on a monolith where you couldn't at least find some way of breaking that apart. The reason I don't like the giant unit test project is, well, for obvious reasons. You don't want to run that whole thing.
Sure, if you're only working on one logical area of your application, especially if it's a distributed application and you have separate microservices set up in different projects, to be able to say, here's my test just for this logical area, that makes sense.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and you're totally right about the integration test, SP Boyer, if that's how you say that.
That's Shane Boyer.
Oh, okay, cool. So yes, the idea with separating out the integration test is because of dependencies. And what we want to avoid with that is I like to make it so that that as a developer, I cannot mess up. And the way I make it so I can't mess up and do something stupid is in my unit test, I don't even have a reference to the real classes that do the real stuff. So I cannot say connect to a database. Like if I go and I write that, I don't want like a namespace completion or anything like that where I suddenly get, oh, I wrote an integration test and didn't mean to and didn't even notice it happened. So by limiting dependencies, I can make sure the unit tests stay clean.
All right, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to do this quick replays to rename things to Stream Tools Tests, so we get that lined up.
Sounds good.
Right. All right. So it left some of these open for me, and I should be able to just save everything and be happy. Because everything's going to line up with the same, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Good. I'm not seeing any red lines.
And don't forget to do a commit after this.
Oh. And I don't need the find results screen, and that one works. Now I do have a red line up here in the services. Oh, went away. All right. Let's make sure everything builds. I'm going to do a Control-Shift-B. DJ Vortex, but could you fix and your unit test and inadvertently affect another test elsewhere?
So depending on what you're doing, yes, you can run into that sort of thing, and it depends. I will give you an example. There's some debate over where the line is between a unit test and an integration test. And some people draw that line as if you're staying in memory, you're still a unit test because it still runs fast and other things like that. And the part where it gets into that gray area is things like caching. So if you're using, say, like built-in web caching, that's staying in memory. You're not writing that out to anything. It's not really out of process. But at the same time, because it has state, I would argue that should be tested as part of the integration tests. And so in the integration tests, I spend more time making sure that I reset all the things I do so that I'm less likely to affect other tests. Whereas when I'm in a unit test, I'm like, oh yeah, just fire and forget. I'm trying not to leave any state anyway, which means I try to avoid having things like caching be tested in unit tests. And the way that I do that, I don't want to get into specifics because that I could spend a whole thing on. But I actually extract the caching layer out as like an infrastructure dependency so that I don't end up having that as part of any core application, so I can keep my unit tests pure.
Very cool. All right. Just had to change the reference there because internals were only visible to the test project. Well, we don't have tests anymore. It's now unit tests. So
yes.
Save that, and now everything should build properly, and then we'll do a commit. Cool. Do you have a blog with any of those additional insights on unit testing?
I do, and I crashed it recently messing around in Azure.
Wait. You just blamed Azure for your blog?
Yes, totally did. I host my blog on Azure, and I said I messed it up. I didn't blame them for it.
Okay.
I may have done a couple of things and knocked it out about a week ago. Finding time to bring it back online is that's a chore.
Sure.
But yes, once I bring it back up, I will bring it back up with those things. I do have posts about all the things I talked about here. So.
All right. There we go.
Including stuff on separating out your caching layer.
And I'm going to push that change. Cool.
Good change.
All right, so now I've got my project renamed to unit tests, and all of my tests should still work. I did just build. Thank you. Good. 9 tests passed. Everything's green. All right. I don't even need to see what's down here. Green.
Yep. As long as it's all green, we don't have to check anything else. So the next thing I know you wanted to talk about is just your test structure.
Yeah, right. It feels weird that I've got a services folder and a startup folder and then tag helpers, and I'm not even really using the tag helper anymore because we decided to start using the bundler instead of that SignalR tag helper we were pitching. But right, I have this services folder that's trying to test some of the things that are going on here in my services class to make sure that I'm handling and doing things appropriately when events are raised by the different services, right? Because interacting with Twitch and Mixer is a little bit tricky. So naming, and it's hard to see behind my fat head here, naming these folders, stream service and Twitch service, where stream service is really the things that I aggregate from my services, right? So I can pass it along, right? And then these things are, testing that are we getting the follower count aggregated separately, and are we properly summing from all of the services or something being dropped? It's the freaking hat. They don't like my... Look at that. Look at it right there. Super Bowl champions. Hey, tell you what, it took my team 58 years to get there, buddy. I'm gonna live it.
Hey, man. Hey, you know who your guest on here is, right?
I'm so sorry. Cleveland season starts today.
Yeah, like people say that every year.
All right.
Okay, cool. So
how should I? Does this make sense to have that logical grouping of services, and then I know you have a structure that you guys go after where it feels like a given when then statement in your hierarchy.
yeah, so the first part of the structure is I usually like to match with what the project is that it is referencing. First off, so that it's easy for someone to find where the test is, so they can say, where am I in my solution? Okay, I know the tests for this are going to be in the same place. And with unit tests, usually there is a main entry point for the test, and that's where the grouping is. So even if your unit test does affect more than one class, and yes, I am okay with a unit test hitting more than one class, it's whatever the entry point is, whatever the class is you're calling, that's the one that you want to make sure that you've matched. So effectively, I match the namespace to that one until you get to the last folder. Right before your test. So in our case, what do you have? You have...
So I am in services, and then the class that
So stream service is your class. So that is perfect. So so you have your services folder and then your stream service folder.
Okay, so you're good up to that point.
I would rename stream service folder to stream service tests. And the reason for that is that it's now easy when you're namespace completing. Hey, I can spot that one. I'm definitely not using that. That way, if you do need a fake or something like that, sometimes you do actually need to build a real fake class and not just use a mock because you need more control over what happens. So it's in this namespace then.
So aren't I running into a lot of the tests word here? Because I've got stream tools test dot services dot stream service tests.
Yep. And the only reason why that distinction is important is the fact that a lot of namespace completion still is based on that last one. I usually don't actually even type the first word anyway. So up to you. We can nuke that one if you like. But why don't we get a name of a class set up first, and then we can look at what it ends up with.
Okay.
So, and because yes, I do sometimes skip the word tests on there.
On the end here.
Yes.
Okay,
so the first thing we want to take a look at, so you have some other tests in here already that test this class.
Yep.
Why don't we just jump on one of those first instead of making a new one, so we don't have to figure out what else needs a test here.
All right, so I'm going to yank this. Should I leave that folder name there?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at follower count by service.
Okay, so follower count by service. So we're saying services, let's see, in your test, you run follower count by service.toList on your stream service object.
Yes.
Okay.
And I pass in 2 instances of an iStream service that are actually being created for me by AutoFixture using this AutoMock stream service with name and count.
Okay. So what we're doing here is testing that method, so that's good. And then on our test, we are saying should count separately. Okay. So what I would say is I would just add the word, I would take the word should off of your method on 13.
Okay.
Put that up on the class.
Follower count by service should.
Yep.
Okay.
So that is very clearly, a test now, because every time I see a should, I know that that's a fixture because I'm setting up the expectation.
All right, so I should be able to also rename my file. There we go. So right?
Yep.
Follower count by service, and it didn't put
It did
should
not
over here.
rename the file.
Liar!
Yeah. So the next thing that I would tweak on this, so actually I'm noticing something weird here, and this is one of those things that I don't know how people on the stream feel about this one. Line 20.
Line 20 here.
Uh-huh. What's the type of that?
Oh gosh. So that's actually returning a list, but it's called count. That feels weird.
Yeah, that feels really weird.
Because then, right, look at this, count.count.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
All right. That is weird, isn't it?
And because it's called var, it also just looks weird. It's like, wait a minute, okay, we have a list. It's var count.
So let's rename that. Gosh. So I'm going to hit F2 here, and let's call this, do we call it result? Do we call it...
What is this? This is a list of something, right?
This is a service list.
Yeah, okay. There we go. So we could just call it the service list. We could call it result if you want. Like, if I don't have a better name for something in a test, I will just call it result. But a lot of times it's good to say what it is.
Okay. So
because then it looks clear.
Sure, right? We're using those same good naming conventions that we would use in writing our normal application.
Yeah. That's one of the things that actually that surprises me a lot is people, when they write tests, tend to drop all the same things that they do. It's like, no, you would do this there, right? Yeah, okay, extract a method for that. Pull out the reusable code. It's like, let's make this clear. We have to maintain this. Okay, so we now have our service list.count. So we've got that, and
we're making sure that it contains the two streams that were passed in.
Yep.
And then we're checking to make sure that the current follower count that's being reported does match what's actually inside that collection. So really, this is just make sure that the two that are passed in are actually still in the follower count by service that's being output. Oh,
makes sense.
Here's the question from Mr. Magoo that I hear from folks a lot. How do you test that your tests are good?
Depends on what you mean by good. But the yes, the first thing you want to do is when you write it to begin with, you want to make sure that you can fail for the right reason. And I really want to specify exactly the way I said that. Just getting a red is not okay. You need to actually look at why it failed and look at the output from it. Okay. Because it's really important when you make a test to make sure that it can fail. Additionally, if you're ever working with a test and you want to make sure that it is still good, you can just go make it fail. So we could go right now, for example, if we wanted to hop over to the stream service and just make this fail, make sure we get our red for the reason we expect, and then make it pass again by just fixing the code that we break. So that's usually the way.
I could change this to first.
Sure, yeah. Actually...
put a first in front of it and then do select. Right? Why am I not getting...
just do a where on it or something. Because first is going to return a single item, not a collection.
Sure.
Oh, actually, no, just do a take one.
Oh, there we go. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah, take one. Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, count. There we go. Right, and when this runs, we should see it fail.
Oh, it could be more than one thing fails considering the change.
No, I don't want to run test from the last one. I want to know why I broke it.
You left the select on there.
Did I?
Yeah, just change.
Well, no, I do need to select so I get the appropriate.
Oh yeah, no. Do the take one at the beginning. Well, what did we break? Where's our error?
That's what I was looking for. What did we break? Oh, it's the unit tests are...
Oh, we left something sitting around, huh?
Well, occasionally the Test Explorer is copying things and not quite working. Just create your test as a PR to Jeff. He'll check it then. There we go. All right, so no source available. Okay, so this is actually failing for the wrong reason.
Hang it. No. Go read it more.
Assert equal failure expected to.
Yeah,
okay, so it's.
Yeah, we just need a bigger Test Explorer section down there.
Yeah, look, here I'm trying to. We looked at this last time, and it's not letting me resize.
How do I? I'm gonna pull up my Visual Studio. I think I usually have my Test Explorer actually below everything, like a full bottom line, so it ends up.
Well, here's the problem. If it's the full bottom line, it's behind me.
Oh right, yeah.
There's that whole green screen thing happening. If I put it over here, that's not too bad.
Yeah, so I guess if you put it on the left and had it hidden, like you untick the push pin, then you could let it expand out over your code window when you're looking at it.
Yes. All right, so let me.
Then we could see it. Yeah, it needs to be separate from this. It can't be. It needs to be a separate.
It needs to be a separate docked element, not part of the tab unit.
Yep.
This whole thing.
There you go. Now it's its own.
Look at this. What the heck is this? I don't want that. What is compiler inline report optimization report? Go away.
No, that was from the same one as the Solution Explorer, I thought, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
So I want the Solution Explorer pinned.
Now unpin your Test Explorer. That's why it's getting pushed over so far.
Yeah.
There you go. Now when Test Explorer pulls out, it'll overlap the Solution Explorer.
But Solution Explorer won't expand now. And I feel bad.
Yeah, it still has that super narrow little drag point.
In a way, Jeff's in the way. Remove Jeff, please. Sorry.
Yeah, on it.
Yeah, here, we'll do this. I was over there, and now I'm over here now.
Hey, welcome to the fun side of the stream.
Yeah, right. I'm on the right coast. Right side.
Oh, it's the wrong way. I don't know. They mirror it for me. What do you want?
I'm putting myself back in the lower left corner because I like the left. There we go. That's better. OMG. What's up, Bruno? What do we do?
I think it's probably the stuff with Test Explorer and trying to drag the Solution Explorer. So let's pull up the Test Explorer. Let's see how much we can see now. Because we want to see why that thing failed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the wrong count.
2 pixel little drag thing. Yeah, there we go.
And yeah, that doesn't want to expand. Nice.
Who makes this product?
I know, seriously.
Jeez.
What's funny is
right,
we were running this yesterday on our test over Skype, and it was running just fine. We bring OBS into the mix so we can start streaming this, and
Lame OBS. I see how it is.
What's interesting is it still has kind of this ghost of here's what I ran before, and it's not there anymore.
Yeah, you can clear those out.
Isn't that where's the thing to clear them out?
Is it that? There's like a reset something I thought for this whole thing.
Test.
Now you could close the Test Explorer and open a new one.
Go away. Windows. Test Explorer. Nope, they're still there.
It's still there. Okay. Well, I don't know. I won't worry about it.
I feel bad now. Call them now.
Yeah. All right. I'm just going to throw this. I'm not going to mention any names, but I do use a different Test Explorer.
What is that? That's fine.
Yeah.
You're welcome to whatever makes you happy. The point is you're doing tests.
Yep.
All right. 15 minutes of testing, 1 hour or 45 minutes of layout changes. I know.
Hey, we could spend more time on that if you want.
Nah, on layout changes? No.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So it's failing for the right reasons, so we know that our test is working. So that's like an easy way to just check it. So the other thing that we could do is if we really wanted to make sure that our test passed, I usually don't do this unless I have a reason that I think, hey, this has failed before. Let me really make sure. Because the two things we checked, we failed on that first assert there, which was that we have the correct number.
Right.
Since we also checked that we have a specific one, so we have the, Jeff streams.name on our service and the other stream service.name are both contained in the list. We could change what the contents are, but leave it with 2. So
if I go back over here and instead of just selecting out the name, I could do something like this to add something just to make sure that it breaks.
Yep.
Excuse me. And then rerun this. And we should see it break. I feel like I want to turn on live unit testing just to get the quick break happening. And when I look at that, assert contains not found, list value tuple. Yeah, right. It's looking at some GUID with the name break this jammed onto the end of it.
Yep.
All right.
I like it. It's good.
I'm going to turn on live unit testing so we can see these things break a little bit easier. So we know that it's selecting out the name properly. It's structuring this the same way. It's really, this is almost too simple a unit test where we're really just pinning this functionality down to ensure that we get the same format coming back all the time.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's, those kinds of tests, they matter sometimes. They're not the bright flashy like, wow, that's so cool, look at how that worked, but hey, it'd be really easy to mess that up. So all right, let's go take a look at the test again, because there's a couple of other things that we can talk about with those.
All right.
So one of the things you've been talking about is I guess naming of these, and there are some sneaky little tricks that we can do to improve naming.
Okay. Yeah, naming's the one that, I mean, look at this. I named a class sum because I wanted to inspect the sum and make sure that it was properly adding things up properly. Help me out here.
Yeah, so the first thing I would do is, again, just like the other one, just so, because some, a lot of times a method name is a poor class name.
Okay.
I would just move your should onto that.
Okay, so if I say sum should, and then it looks like I'm going to want to rename these two.
You're going to want to rename your methods too. Yep. So
okay. So let's do that, and then I'm going to do a control period, and yeah, rename sum to sum should, and of course it didn't rename my file. Capitalization. There we go. All right. So now I've moved my should up there. So these things, current follower count handles one service. Now, what am I actually testing in here? Because I named it poorly, I don't know what it's actually...
And that's why the name is so important, is because I can't figure out a lot of times what these things are doing. Okay, so we start off, we create a stream service with your Jeff streams, and we grab our current follower count, like we did in the previous one.
Right, so this method, right, should be summing up across all of my services. Okay, so this is, right, so sum should handle one service. Right?
So I almost want to shift these. Okay, so... these almost feel like they're these two things. This is follower count by service. Current follower count. Okay, so I want to change it from sum to be current follower count should instead of sum should.
Okay, so let's do
we're
that.
testing the current follower count.
So we say current follower count should.
Yes.
Should sum one service?
Let's see. What do we call on it? We're just comparing that with the total of that.
Yeah, to make sure, right? The current, because, right, current follower count, all that this does, it's strictly a shortcut method to sum and give me the total follower count.
So current follower count should,
gosh, and
I'll say match.
Well, actually, I was going to say, Brendan, it feels like this is a poorly named property. This maybe should be total follower count.
That is a very good point. Yes.
All right, so let me do that first. So I'm going to do an F2 here so I can jump into renaming. And I'm going to grab current follower count and change that to total.
So the one thing you're going to run into every time when you're doing unit testing is it is not going to get the names of the folders or anything else. We have to do that ourselves.
Sure. But okay, do you see what I'm running into
No,
here?
I love it.
Well, what I'm running into is the interface has current follower count.
Uh-huh.
And each one of my services has current follower count that'll be changed to total follower count.
Oh, so because the Fritz one is that they would each do this. So yeah, current follower count, that's fine. I think we know what it is.
Okay.
So current follower count should, I was going to say for our first one.
So all right, so we're changing this to current follower count should.
Yeah, I would definitely change the class name.
All right, so let's rename over here also. All right.
For the test name,
yeah.
For the first one, I would say it should match the current follower count given a single service, or of a single service, maybe.
I like that given.
Yeah, I like it too, but I want to be clear that we only, I guess.
Given one service.
Yeah. Now, one other thing I do here, and now this, for anybody that's using any tools that have namespace stuff, I underscore right before that word given.
Match current. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the reason I do that is if I do put in a given to give that expectation of, hey, there's this, now you can read it as, okay, what was the state of each thing?
So okay, so it'll read stream service current follower count should match current follower count given one service. Okay. Tests revealed design problems. Yes. Look at this.
Yes, they really do.
And the Mixer folks have figured out that if you add an emoji, add an emoticon.
Yeah. I thought it was hilarious. I was watching the chat and I'm like, oh, good. Someone figured out that like throwing an emoji in there solves the quad thing.
That's quality service right there.
I still want to know, is Mixer messing something up or is Restream messing something up when reading it? Because one of those two, someone's doing something.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I like that name. I now actually understand what is going on here in this test.
Okay.
The other thing I would change, I would get rid of I would rename sum to total follower count on line 21.
Sure. Let's do that. Total follower count.
Because we were wanting to do that name elsewhere and couldn't, but this at least makes it clear when using it, hey, that's the... Yeah, because I think it makes sense, current follower count, when you're on the multi-object. I think we get it, but here it's like, yeah, this is the total. The total should match the current.
Absolutely. And, gosh, look, our friend Stephen Vore there. I think we know him.
Is pointing us to an Ardalis link. That's funny.
That's... so, to be clear, Ardalis is our friend Steve Smith. Good, close colleague of both of ours, particularly yours, Brendan.
Yeah. I mean, I could go over to Steve's house in like 10 minutes. You know, it's like just it's that way.
Quite literally, we had Sarah on, Saduki, Brendan. Literally, I'm just making my way around the neighborhood there, just out in Ohio.
Yeah, we had to steal Saduki from Cleveland. We're actually the Akron group down here, so. It's been good. But yeah, Steve has some good naming convention techniques. Steve and I worked together, did a lot of this stuff. So our naming conventions are pretty similar. So that is actually a very good link for some good unit test naming conventions. The one spot that Steve and I differ is that underscore that I had Fritz put in there. Steve doesn't do the underscore because he's a resharper junkie that is unwilling to tell it that his naming is okay. And I mean, it's like I run it too, but it's one of those like by default it's going to yell at you about that underscore, and he's like, I don't want it, giving me that little squiggly, and I'm like, I can change the naming convention. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So within a project, we always match. So we'll use that one naming convention. So like whomever's naming we choose, whether it's with the underscores or without, we will match that. because it's important that through a project you're consistent. So that's the naming I would go with. Why don't we try applying the same thing down to the next one?
Okay, before we jump into that, real quick, Stephen Vore in the chat room, go ahead, post your link again, and I added you as a regular, so you should be able to post links. Mixer emotes, pick a convention, any convention. Should be service follower count, so that way it would not need to give in part. Restream is also messing with it on Twitch, I think. It seems to mess with this. What did we do? No, that's looking all right.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the restream issue is, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's definitely coming up weird on my restream chat when we navigate there directly. So, yeah. That feels weird. All right. Nice. All right. All right. So you wanted to. So the question that was asked was, should be service follower count here? I sent them a fax complaining.
Yeah, we could. The only other thing.
Well, let's use this same name down here for this sum.
Yep. I like it.
Total follower count. Okay. And then,
okay,
yeah, what
cool.
should I rename this thing? Current followers count handles multiple services. Ugh.
Yeah, so I would say, let's see, what are we doing? So we're trying to make sure that...
Given multiple services, right?
Yep, given multiple services.
Okay.
So current should... we could say total the count of each service, or sum the count of each service. So we could say sum count of each service.
Sum count from each service.
Yep, I like that.
So let's save, and if we go over to our test explorer. Now, why am I not seeing the live unit test marks in here? I thought I turned that on. Right? I'm not seeing my markers over here.
Oh, yeah. Huh, don't know.
All right. Test explorer, so let's rerun everything. Kind of force the issue here. Because I think I've confused it a little. Well, there's a first problem. No. Try again.
Why is it giving us build errors?
I've got it building several different ways at this point, right? Because it's building for the unit test. Yeah. Right.
Well, either way, they're still passing, which is good. And let's see what those names look like. Yeah, see, there's the problem we're running into.
I'm just gonna dock this like this.
Yep, that works.
Give me a whole screen. So now, I mean, look at those huge names. Stream tools, tests, services, and I can make this go down the bottom, can I?
So the other trick is a hierarchical naming on these helps.
Yes. Right, I thought there was a way to make the panel go down to the bottom.
Oh, to change the orientation within this?
Yeah.
I believe there is. In fact, I think it had it that way when it was on the left.
It did, because it was a specific size. Right, so if I go to like this one, see, now it's down the bottom.
Oh.
But whatever. It's got to be that it hits a certain size and it's going, oh, I can fit it. Turn it sideways. So, soon it tests for every service. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
So your next step, Fritz, is to convince the Microsoft team that works on Visual Studio to support a hierarchical structure for this, where they go down by namespace, and then all we need to see is the class name and the method name.
Actually, let me see if I did. Do I have the preview installed on this machine? If I have the preview installed, it's in the preview for 15.6. That's quality right there. Quality stuff. I do have the preview. 15.6 preview 2. So let's do that. I'm going to close this Visual Studio because it's already acting kind of wonky here. and I'm going to go to the other Visual Studio, which that doesn't sound weird at all.
Yep.
I should
Totally
just left
normal.
the installer up. Oh yeah, totally normal. This is the way we do things. So I'm going to launch the preview version, so everybody has access to the preview. The preview is always free, available for you to download and check out and test out some of the new features, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can see I've been actively using it on this machine. All right, and let's close that. Recent projects. I don't have any recent projects on this configuration. C, dev, Fritz, stream, tools. I'm typing here. Look at that. It's downloading my configuration in the background.
I gotta say, that was one of the things I was most happy about finally getting in, like Visual Studio Core, was all my settings being uploaded. Used to have to use tools that would, do that for me, keeping all my profile changes to sync between computers.
Oh, yeah. So let me get rid of this properties window. I want to move my Solution Explorer over here.
So a techie thought, this runner is also going to be a little bit better, the one that we're about to see.
Oh, yeah. I think you're right. So test, Windows, Test Explorer. There it is. Shirky1612, thank you for joining us. And I missed earlier, Luso Coding, thank you for joining us. So now if I look at this one, and that feels bad. Let me close those up, bring this one back up. Will it expand after I pin it? No, of course not. But this one should have, no, I don't see the hierarchy. There was a hierarchy button that I was looking at. Come here, you.
I know we saw that yesterday.
This is why we did the tech check. It's like,
yeah, we did the tech check to make sure that we could do exactly this.
And it's not here. Well, that feels better. I can at least, right? There's an extra button that pops up here, and I don't see it. If I do that one, nope. Run them in parallel, sure, go ahead. And
if they're actually unit tests, it should be safe.
Right. Run all. Why isn't? Oh yeah, turn on run tests after build. Sure. But at least we cleared up that other garbage that was in here.
Oh, that's actually a good idea. Turning off the Docker project.
So there we go. I mean, that looks pretty good. And what I wanted to show, gosh, was that hierarchy. Why isn't the hierarchy?
Yeah, because the nice thing in the hierarchy, just so you guys know, is you'll notice the individual test names are really long, but it'll remove the namespace. So we won't have to see that part. We'll just see the test name.
Right. I can group by class, right? And I mean, that helps, but I've still got all this extra junk here, right? I mean,
yeah,
should drop right here. And that is in the 15.6 version of Visual Studio. It's just not here.
Are you on the latest version on here already? I wasn't looking when you were in the VS installer.
15.6 Preview 4. I thought I had. Hang on.
Yeah, see?
Look at that. There is an update for this one. Rats. I thought I applied the update.
Well, we now know why we can't see that one. So brand new in the newest preview, guys, is this hierarchical version. So like you'll have an individual expanding point at each dot of the namespace all the way down to the test name. So that way we end up with, a single expand that'll show just for that class, and the names are nice and clear, so that all we'd be reading is just the what is it? The current follower count should, and then right below it, a match current follower count given.
Just the method name.
Single.
Yeah.
It'll be nice. It'll be nice. All right, let's continue on so we don't.
Now you're making me feel bad here.
The update thing. It'll be good. It'll be good.
Right. Here's what I'm going to do, just to try and make this up to everybody because of this silliness that I'm dealing with. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to tell, right, this is how crazy the new Visual Studio is. I'm actually going to update the one while we're using the other. Look at that.
Mm-hmm. That's nice.
Your installation has started. We'd like to ask you a few questions about how you'll be using Visual Studio. I'm going to be using it on stream, thank you.
Yeah. One of the other nice things is that you can actually have multiple instances. So at one point I had Community, Enterprise, and Professional of all the same version installed on my machine because it was like, oh, I'm working with a team that uses, Professional. Okay, I need to not run the Enterprise. I need to be on this.
Yeah.
Or, oh, I want to record a thing that I want everybody in the community to match what I'm able to do. Okay, I need to run Community.
So while that's installing, I can continue using Visual Studio over here and not break anything.
I don't think
Yeah.
you can, Space Shot.
What did he do? Can you go back to a previous update of Visual Studio 2017? No. Why would you want to? It only gets better. More betterer. Yeah, there you go. All right. I think I have every version back to VC6 installed. Dude, that's crazy. I don't even go back that far. All right. So we've renamed some of these methods, and we'll see what they look like in the new and improved Test Explorer. And since I just opened it and I have live unit testing should be running. I hope it's running. It's not running. There we go. You see it did the indent, and the glyphs aren't appearing here inside my test. Okay. We'll flip over to the other Visual Studio in a bit when it's done installing. But things look like they're running all properly here. What happens if I look in that actual class? Right, we should see there's the test glyphs. But we're not seeing them over here for some reason. Weird.
Well, either way, we can still make this work.
Absolutely. All right, so we've renamed these methods, and they look and feel a bit better.
So there are a couple of other things that I like doing that we can talk about.
Oh, there they are.
Oh, hey. I wonder if it's because it didn't have much space that they didn't show them, or maybe it just took a while to load. Either way, so there's something else that I like. When we look at the lines, say line 24 and 41, where we have assert dot equal such and such, such and such. Like, again, it kind of falls into that idea of like, I'm not speaking words. This doesn't just make sense to me.
Okay.
So kind of like how before where, you get your tests and you're like, blah test, blah example. It feels a little bit like that where it's like this it's not expressive. It doesn't say to me, hey, here's what I'm checking, here's what I'm doing and why. So something that I like, and this comes down to preference a little bit, is there is a Nougat package that maybe some people have heard of. I forget who did it, but it's called Fluent Assertions.
Well, let's go look it up. Manage Nougat packages.
Yep, that's the one.
Fluent Assertions. I think I know who made that.
I can't remember who did, but I really appreciate it because it's good. I think it's one word.
Is it one word?
I think it is. I don't know. It auto-completes on mine anymore.
There we go.
Yeah.
Dennis Duman. 7.1 million downloads. Just a few.
Yeah. I mean, I have been telling people to download this for years also, so I'm probably responsible for at least 100 of those.
Oh, fantastic. All right, so I'm going to add that to this project because I can.
So the cool thing about this is...
Uh-oh. The imported project was not found. Confirm that the import declaration is correct. The file exists on disk. Oh, look at that. He's referring to a 2.1 SDK. Where is that coming from? Yeah, we're going to get all kinds of grouchy here now. Thanks.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks a bunch. It wasn't me.
Yeah, the Nougat search isn't the best thing ever.
No, it's amazing.
It does its job.
So it looks like it was added. Right, let me go back into the project file. This one. Right, so there's Fluent Assertions version 5 right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's Microsoft.NET SDK, and it's referencing the CS proj.
Our squiggly lines disappeared. Can we build?
Great question.
Yeah, I agree. Fewer dependencies is definitely better, but adding one to improve naming is not too bad.
Certainly, right? I mean, these are all helpers to help make our test writing experience better. So, I'm pretty okay with that. Nougat searches, meh. Oh, I tell you. The process cannot access because it is being used by another process. So this is something that I kind of get.
Oh, yeah, we're testing.
Exactly. The unit test fired off in the background. And even though I told it to build, it should recognize, oh, I'm already building. Don't worry about kicking off another build. Just when my shadow build in the background is done, copy that over. You know? Reuse that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I will agree with you, Joban, that when I was program manager for Nougat, there was a decision that I fought the engineers on where they wanted to search and match the part of a name of a package that was separated by a period. To which that feels weird to me. Do a fuzzy text search on the whole stupid thing. If you search for entity framework dot, dot SQL Server or something, right, or whatever, right? Entity framework dot core. If you just search for the word entity, it wouldn't find entity framework, which feels weird. So, there's some work that can be done there. After watching Jonathan blow stream about libraries, I've started checking NuGet and NPM packages into source control. I'm not opposed to that. And Brendan, what do you think of this? I like checking in libraries into source control that are going to be whose assets are being deployed to production. Because if something happens and I can't get to NuGet when I need to rebuild in the middle of the night, something happens to my network and I get cut off from that repository, I want to have a local copy of what I'm deploying as part of my application.
Yeah, so I agree with you completely there, Fritz. You have the exact case that I was trying to explain many years ago. You would not believe the argument with the NuGet team when I was trying to explain to them that I still commit libraries to source control. They're like, "But why?" And I'm like, "But why not? Like, there's no cost, and when I deploy this, I know it works. So let's say down the road that that NuGet doesn't exist in 5 years, which I know the likelihood of that is basically zero.
Sure.
Let's say that it's down for a day.
Sure.
Let's say it's down for an hour, and I need to do something. Someone might say, "Oh, but you've got a local copy." It's like, maybe I don't. Maybe the dev who works on it doesn't have,
Sure. And I think and Digital Drummer J is actually making a good point. When you're git cloning a project with node modules that has thousands and thousands of files, you're right. That does feel bad. And I don't think we would recommend checking that in for dev purposes, right? And even I would even caution against, do you really need it in source control? I would say you just need a local copy somewhere, right? If you're running your own internal NPM server or your own internal NuGet server, great. You have your local copy. You can take backups of it, and you have it available to your organization. The same argument will apply to cloud and on-premise. Certainly, right? It's a question of how much can you tolerate downtime? Can you tolerate downtime of your connection to that repository, to npm.js, to NuGet, to the Ruby Gems repository? Both do cache locally already to your developer workstation. They cache to your continuous integration server as well. So you do have that going for you. But if something happens to your continuous integration and you need to pull down, start up a whole new instance somewhere.
So I am going to be working on a project here soon that hasn't had any developer touch it in years.
Oh gosh.
And so I am hoping that all of the NuGet packages it depends on have, some kind of version lock or something, or that someone committed them. Because, like, well, I know that the package isn't going to disappear off Nougat. Maybe the version did, or who knows what.
There are very, very rare circumstances where the Nougat folks will remove packages from the service. It's very, very rare, and it usually involves a lawyer.
Yep. But if it ever comes up, I don't want to be just left there with, hey, this doesn't build. Figure out what, like which version could work. Oh, you upgrade to the new one. Hey, now everything's breaking because, there were changes. So.
Oh, yeah. And actually, while we were talking here, look at that. The other Visual Studio finished installing.
Awesome.
So let's change Visual Studios. That feels weird, changing Visual Studios. But it works.
I mean, I usually have multiples running.
Multiple Visual Studios?
Usually, yeah.
Okay, that feels weird.
Well, I mean, I still live in the desktop world, man. I refuse to give these things up. So if there's one thing, you have in spades on a desktop computer, it's, processing power and RAM.
Oh, yeah. Good question. Good comment by Standby Reloading. Somebody pulls a version off and no more build. Just ask everybody who depended on LeftPad on NPM.js. Oh, when that happened, there were some pretty upset folks. There it is. That's the hierarchy button. So you turn on hierarchy, and now this just looks and feels a lot better. Current follower count should match current follower count given one service. Some count from one service given multiple services.
Yep.
There we go.
So now this is what we were going for, which means if you match this naming convention and you use the built-in Visual Studio test runner, today it's going to get ugly. But
tomorrow it looks a lot better.
Tomorrow.
Or later today if you install the preview.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Tomorrow, like in the future. I'm not telling you when it's being released. Ugh.
You heard it here, folks. Tomorrow's the release date. Fritz just...
No! All right. So we've cleaned up a little bit of how this is structured. Does this feel weird that I have an arrange section that doesn't have anything in it now? Or is that kind of... Or is that kind of like to be expected because we're passing it in using auto-fixture?
So a lot of times when trying to get the discipline of unit testing, so when teams are just starting out, I will tell them do the arrange act assert just to make sure that you get those and organize like that, so that you're not like doing more setup while like during the action part of the test, so you can get those nice groupings. Once teams are kind of disciplined about that, I usually just have them get, stop making the comments, you're going to do it right now because you've gotten used to it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and I like to put them in, particularly when I'm showing code, when I'm live coding, so that folks know here's exactly what I'm doing, especially if they're new to the discipline.
So what's funny about this is I would actually take line 20 and put that up where the arrange is.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You would just scoot that up like that.
Even though it is technically acting, because the creation of that is when it really happens, right? Because, that's when we did our stuff. But the action we're taking is confirming that the getter is working right, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So these are a weird case. And this is part of the reason why, like, once you start doing this for a while, I say just get rid of the comments. Because these blur together a little bit, so it's like, but you get a nice separation of, hey, I did this, because you really did do the setup first, you took an action, you confirmed the action.
Sure. Digital Drummer J is saying, I'm all kinds of announcing dates on stream. Last time it was build, now it's Visual Studio. No. I actually have a meeting today with some folks to talk about content and planning for build, and I have no idea what I'm going to be told. So
you couldn't possibly know the date.
I can't possibly know that.
Exactly.
I know how to write code, and I don't know when the dates are.
All right. So
we got that cleaned up. All right. So I'll save that.
Did our Fluent Assertions actually come in? I didn't see it. Are we still getting build errors?
Okay. Yeah. No, we're good. We have Fluent Assertions. Let's
good. Let's
take a look over here.
Let's put that in really quickly and get a commit.
Sure. And Greasy Gibbon, thank you for joining us. All right, how do we do the fluent assertion? So
Okay.
you were saying this assert equal just feels weird.
Yeah, so the only nice thing about it is that everyone can see, hey, yeah, you're doing your assert, right? You can test that because everybody can spot that.
Sure.
But you know how else everybody pretty much always spots that in your unit test? It's literally the last thing you do every time. Like is that, right?
Okay.
Or you might do a cleanup, at which point I would just call like a cleanup method or something for that. But what I want to do instead is have you do this. We are saying that our total follower count should equal the jeffstreams.current follower count, right?
Yes.
So let's type that in. So say total follower count and then say dot. Lowercase d, yeah.
All right.
Okay, so we don't have fluent assertions in here. Let's go add that.
Well, I don't have the I don't have the using statement.
Yep.
So what are we using?
I think it's using fluent assertions. There you go.
So now if I come back down here in control period, ooh, look at all the cool goodies we got now.
So say should.
Hey, look at that.
There you go. And then after the closing paren, just say, you can just say like a dot b or something like that, or equal. Yeah, equals. There it is.
No, how about should be? Right?
I think that'll match the same thing. Yeah, I think that'll work.
Right, is equals.
Yeah. It can do the same thing. That's going to do an equals. But yeah, say it should be. You're right. You're right. That's the wrong equals. I said it right initially and then saw equals and got confused.
So this should be Jeff Stream's current follower count.
There you go.
And then it looked like there was actually, yeah, so because, so is that my error message that I can throw?
Yes, so you could put in the message just like you would add the message in for like the assert. The cool thing is they called it because and made it optional, so you could, if you wanted to, put the word because in there, and then it would read, this should be this, because this is expected to happen, you know, or something like that.
So let me get rid of that. Let's, oh, it doesn't have my tab settings. Ugh. All right. So now...
Which your tab settings are really good for streaming, by the way.
I know, right?
With limited screen real estate, 2 spaces is better.
Well, okay. To be clear, 2 spaces is just superior.
That's a debate that people can have, and I'm not getting into that holy war there. But I will say, for streaming, where screen real estate is limited...
That's better. All right. Yes.
All right.
Well, I also use it when I'm writing, right? And I'm embedding code because I want to make sure that it all fits. All right. So I could actually take this and say, right, let's put these on separate lines, right? And then that actually
totally could.
Reads. And you said I can put a because here?
Yeah, you can say because equals that. Or, yeah. Because it's a named, yeah.
All right. That's pretty nice to be able to read.
Yeah. So that's the nice trick with that, is that you can get a nice expressive assert.
Yeah. And Joban, you're right. That should have come out of editor config. It should have set that up. So I'm going to do the same thing down here. Total follower count dot should right be.
Yep.
And then
and you'll notice there's all kinds of things that you can do in here. Like this can go way beyond what we're using it for.
And then I could say because, and then I can put in because. Well, is the because why it failed, or is because the, oops, not equals, that should be a colon.
Yep.
4-minute phrase explaining why the assertion is needed. So is this the error message? Current follower count did not match?
That should be the message that is displayed if the assertion fails.
Okay. So,
but there's a great way to test it.
The service follower counts. Let's do that. So I could change this, right? We could make this fail by changing this to 3. And
Yeah, I like it too, Jobun. It definitely reads easily.
All right, so now I can look at my one test that failed. Message, expected value to be 3 because did not sum the service follower counts, but found 306.
There you go.
Because did not sum the follower counts. Okay.
Yeah, our phrasing, like we now know what phrasing to put in there to make it make sense in the error message.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Expected value to be 3 because because follower counts should be summed, and then this should reformat and look more English. Because follower counts. No. There we go. Because follower counts should be summed, but found 259. Cool. All right. But this should actually be
the real value
the
in there.
real value. Save. Yeah. And then this should all pass. So that looks pretty cool. I like using that fluent assertion there, right? So should is just turning things around, and it's replacing that equals bit.
Yep. The should be is instead of assert are equal, or assert equals, or assert equal. So it's just as long, but it just reads easily.
So you know what? Let's put because on another line here. Just...
Yes, playing with scissors. The named parameters in C# methods is really awesome. I hope you're paying attention to C# because our new thing that's coming in is going to be able to the optional parameters in any position is going to be really nice. So I hope people are checking that stuff out.
That's C#. Is it 7.2?
It's 1 or 2. I don't remember which one it's in, but most people aren't using those yet.
No. All right. I'm just taking a quick peek over on Twitter just to make sure there's nothing going crazy over there.
I know a lot of people that agree with playing with scissors on that comment that love C# and don't like Visual Studio. If you are in that camp, Visual Studio does a lot of things, but I would recommend you check out VS Code. It's a lot lighter weight.
Oh, yeah.
So you can still C# without, monolithic application taking over your computer.
Oh, yeah. So let's make sure we're formatting this properly. So this is the value that we're testing. This is the value that we received, right? This is the result that we're inspecting. And that's what we hang the dot should off of, not the expected value. Right?
Correct.
This is the actual, and B is the expected value. Okay.
Yep. Result should be the expected value.
Cool. All right.
So one other thing that was mentioned in your chat.
Oh, yeah.
The standby reloading. Yep, you can totally use string interpolation for that message. You may have also noticed if you looked at the overload on the because that there were optional because parameters. There was a params in the overload. So if he wanted to, that is a format string that's going to happen. But now that we have string interpolation, they don't really need to give us that. Like those helpers just aren't as useful anymore. So you can just string interpolate that. So yay C#. So if you wanted to have your because include one of the relevant values at the time, you can do that. Because the only ones that are going to be in the error message right now are the expected value and the actual value.
So I could do that.
So you could put both of those in there. So you could put the Jeff Streams one and the other stream service one in there if you wanted the full thing.
So I could say follower counts, and I could say Jeff Streams current follower count. And
in this case, it's going to get kind of long, but you can see how there would be circumstances where doing this would be really useful in certain tests where you're like, I really want to see what the individual values were that went wrong at the time that things happened.
So I just stuck a +1 on there to make sure it breaks. So now the message, expected value to be 227 because follower count's 159, and 67 should be summed but found 226.
Yep. There you go.
Cool. All right. I'm going to just remove those and simplify this statement again. And my test already passes. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Where to next? Explicitly nullable reference is probably a better name for the feature. Well, that's another feature that's coming. All right, so we've renamed these two to something should. I want to actually take a look at this one because this one I think is an interesting test. So this is the on new followers event, right? So on the Twitch service, let's close these other ones. And I want to go grab the Twitch service. Now this one, the Twitch service has, collapse everything up. Here's the event. Service on new followers detected, right? Here's the event Razor, and the event is actually up here somewhere. There it is. Updated, right? So we can track when things are updated so we can notify things appropriately, right? And so we have a way to reach in and trigger this. We can also, it's also being triggered internally when it hears from the actual, right, Twitch endpoint itself. And it'll update the current follower count internally, and then it'll raise this event for us to go and inspect things. Now, on new followers is the name of my method here, the name of my class. So let me see if I've learned this correct. So I'm testing the Twitch service. So should I rename this to Twitch service tests?
If we want to go with that, you can.
Okay.
A lot of these come down to preference. So if you don't like the tests on there, then leave it off. It won't make a big difference.
So all right, I'll leave that the way it is right now, just to keep things moving. So
Sounds
on
good.
new followers is the feature on that class that we're testing, and I'm using the word feature because it's not a method, it's an event.
Yep.
But you would suggest
Yeah.
putting the word should on the end here.
I would. Yep.
And so instead of having should set current follower count,
Yep. Because that also removes it from every one of your methods now, whereas before you had the word should at the beginning of each one, and they don't.
they kind of look funny.
Yeah.
Okay. So now this is actually saying set current follower count, and it's inspecting the follower count inside of the Twitch service. So set current follower count.
I would almost say update the current follower count. Yeah, and are we given anything? Are we doing anything special with this one?
Update current follower count. We are. No, not really.
Yeah, because if we don't really have anything, if there's no special case, if there's nothing about it, there's no parameter we're passing in, nothing we're doing, then I wouldn't even add a given.
Okay. And then this one should raise the event properly. So I want to make sure that it is in fact right, and this is using that XUnit assert raises syntax that we learned about. Right, I want to make sure that it raises the event properly. So right, once again, I'm pinning that functionality. I'm not necessarily looking for it to do any specific business logic, but I want to make sure that this happens and that it always happens.
Yes, because there could be a circumstance where you suddenly don't want it to happen, and you're like, oh, if it was this, then we don't want to raise the event. So it's nice to just have this in here already, and then you could test that circumstance. So yeah, I think this is a good test. A good thing to test for, I should say.
Because we're using that pinning. Make sure this always happens. So,
because right now, so we don't want to, what you want to avoid when you're writing tests is getting to the point where you're locking down not the behavior, but you're locking down the implementation. We don't want to do that too often. But the idea that we're raising an event is important because that really is behavior. Because that's something that calls out, to the ether, right? It's like we're raising this event that anything can be subscribed to. This isn't like calling a specific method. So if we decide later on, hey, instead of using this type of event, we're going to use this other type of event, yeah, we're going to have to go back and fix this up. but this isn't like an the implementation detail aspect of this is just the type of event, not that there is an event, because we're always going to have an event, we think.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Right. The event is being raised because we heard something from the Twitch endpoint, and we want to notify everything that's listening to this service to go and do something with that information if they want to.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
We're opening it up for someone else. The question in the chat, why is there a should at the end of the unit tests? If you mean at the end of the unit test class, that is just to make this read clearly.
Right. So now it says unit tests, stream tools tests, services, Twitch service on new followers should raise event properly and update current follower count.
Yep. So the nice thing about this naming convention, so what we've got set up here, the other thing that I do want to point out is if we get to the point where we have some complicated scenarios we're testing and there's going to be a whole bunch of, I'll say, different classes that need the same setup, we can, that little given suffix that we were doing, the underscore given and then whatever the scenario is we're in, could go on the class level or on the test level. And if we do that, it's a circumstance like, oh, I'm going to test this specific scenario of things, and there are a whole bunch of things I want to check for, and for some reason my action's slightly different even though the setup is always the same. So you can do those kinds of things as well. There's a lot of different circumstances.
And somebody was actually saying earlier that they didn't like seeing, I forget, one of these. I had a bunch of asserts in one of my tests. There we go. And they were suggesting that each one of these asserts should be a separate test instead of having one that runs through 5 different asserts.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, like, we're a developer community, there's a lot of debate on all of those things.
Of course.
My stance on this one is if you're asserting the same concept but trying to get more specific, then I'm cool with having as many asserts as you want. Because if we look at this, really what we've got here is we're really just asserting that this set got, you know, those individual pieces.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is really all the same assert. It's just it took us 5 lines to really confirm the answer we were looking for.
To confirm the contents.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because we wanted to confirm that our follower count by service list contained Jeff Streams, I should say the name Jeff Streams, and then also the other stream service name. And
right.
To do that, we could have asserted this way where we do a count equals 2 and where we do the, individual check of each one. But I mean, there's other ways we could have asserted the same thing. So we could have asserted, say, the first one is Jeff Streams. The last one is the other stream, for example, if we knew the order they were coming in. We also could have done something like, the 0th one is this, index 1 is this. We could do them both. So a lot of it is just confirming that those 2 values are what are in there.
So a techie thought has a good point there. We could use a custom assert object. Oh, look, we've got a cat on stream now. But congratulations, our first cat on stream.
Hey!
And it has no idea what's going on.
No. But he wanted attention, so he's been picked up.
Call in all the call in the troops here. We've got cats on stream now. Yes, the semi-transparent. Somebody pointed out earlier that my cup has blue paint on it, so it's a Guardians of the Galaxy cup, and right there's Groot and Star-Lord, and because there's blue here in the background, and I'm using a blue chroma key, yes, things went semi-transparent, so I can actually, right, you can see code right through my head. That's weird. So you could create one assert statement instead. So how would you create a custom assert statement? I mean, right, so to be clear, what's being returned here is not a collection of services, it's actually a value tuple. So that's why it's kind of like, well, I want to inspect those. right? I mean, if I wanted to write a custom assert, I would write my own. Mm,
There's a handful of ways we could do this.
write an extension method?
We could extension method it. We could just hide the assert inside of a method for a single thing of like assert these values, and then do our own like assert.fail under the circumstance, for example.
Mm.
Yeah, we could extend the existing assert class. There's all kinds of things.
Tuple. A tuple. I've heard.
I use them interchangeably.
So, I was in a panel discussion last week with all the language designers. That's Philip Carter from F#, Mads Torgerson from C#, Kathleen Dollard from VB, and even Anders Heilsberg from TypeScript. And they used tuples. Yes, tuple. So, you know what? I'm sticking with it because that's what they called it. Not tuples, tuples. So, works for me. And if it's good for Mads and Anders, I'm not debating it.
Yeah, I don't worry about that one. It's whatever you want to call it.
Tomato, tomato. All right, so
yeah.
So I get the idea of a custom assert, why you would want to go through and do that type of search. I think that might hide a little bit of the implementation of what I'm doing in my test.
So alternately, one of the things that we could do is if we had a collection assert, we could potentially do something like that. If there were a collection assert where you specified that order didn't matter.
Okay.
So there are collection asserts. We might be able to get away with that because we're really just trying to confirm these two values exist in here. So if we wanted to write that, that's effectively what we're doing, is we're really asserting one thing, which is that we get back a list containing these two values. We don't care about order. If you write a region in this, then, I'm, going to probably drive over to Philly and strangle you.
That's so much better looking, though. Look. I'm asserting things here. Look. Perfect. Fine.
Yes, clearly.
Get rid of that.
Have you heard of a method?
A method,
yeah,
right?
These cool new things they added to the language.
Oh my gosh, really?
It's really great. It's really great. Revolutionizing everything.
Custom assertions.
Oh man.
Right, and then I could do public, static, void.
I will say, like there is a good point. So the reason for the disciplined approach of having, say, one or at most two asserts is that it keeps you focused on the idea that what you're trying to do is test one thing at a time in your unit test.
Sure.
Now, in our case, there's nothing wrong with our 5 asserts, but the fact that we didn't stick to just one means that we could. So if we start glazing over and ignoring the fact that we've got 5 asserts everywhere, we could have more than one focus for a test. Yeah, see, this is the problem we're going to run into is what Mr. Magoo said, which is you need a test now for your custom assertions, because as soon as we start making custom assertions, we have to test that our custom assertions. Yeah. So I wouldn't even bother going down this route. I don't think there's anything wrong with what we've got in that setup there.
Oh, and this should be, this is a value tuple. I need to be, tuple, value tuple. Hello, the powerful train. Hello, powerful train. There we go.
A pro tip for all the mixer people, put an emoji in everything you type.
Because for some reason, your namespace could not be found.
Value tuple. Might not have the reference to it. Yeah.
The generic collection.
Oh, generic one. Yeah.
But I would have to add the other things to check over here. But then I could turn this into, right? Assert.match, not matches. Public static class. Why isn't match tuples? Why isn't it seeing that? Now I feel bad. Is it the wrong assert?
Because you can't take an instance of assert.
Oh.
Yeah, you need an instance of assert, and that's not what that is.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
That's a static class itself.
Yes, exactly. So
So extension method won't work.
yeah, you'd be better off going with the extension route on like what Fluent Assertions does. Because Fluent Assertion extends the objects themselves to write that nice phrasing that we do.
Extension must be defined on a non-generic static class. Well, now that's weird, right? I can't.
Yeah, it has to be static.
So if I do that, now why doesn't it like that one? What doesn't it like?
Can
Static
you add
class?
static extension methods?
No.
Not as far as I know. Anyway.
If Twitch is making mode out of it. The Powerful Train, thank you for the follow. Extensions on static classes don't work. Yeah, emoji gate, I know. Yeah, Restream is bugged. It's not Twitch or Mixer, it's Restream. So yeah, there's a way to extend, right, to do more with this.
Yeah, so I would skip that for now.
Yeah.
Because there are some ways to do it. Why don't we take a look at the collection assert real quickly? Because I actually don't know.
Is that a thing?
No, there was one for.
No.
There is one for NUnit.
Oh, are you going to do that to me? Assert collection verifies that a collection contains exactly a given number of elements which meet the criteria provided by the element inspectors. Oh,
Yeah,
so you have a
let's
collection.
use this. Yeah.
All right, so if
There
we
you
do this, and then we pass in a collection, so that's going to be service list, and then I can provide a series of element inspectors, which inspect each element in turn. The total number of element inspectors must exactly match the number of elements in the collection. Okay, so I would create two, one that inspects the name and okay, hang on.
Wait, total number of elements. Almost wonder if that's a method that each one needs to return true, and we're basically confirming the items that are in it. So, for example, seer contains. Grab the lambda on line 25 and 26. Grab each of those and put them in there as your inspectors.
Yeah, but I think
were the inspectors booleans?
They're
they're params of actions.
So they're not actually looking to return something.
Correct.
That
they're
feels
actions
weird.
of T, where T is the collection type. So they're an action that pulls back the specific T.
So are we supposed to assert true on this?
No, I think we're supposed to.
Because it's not, right? It's an action. It's not a func.
Yeah, I guess that could be. Yeah, sure. Put that in for now.
So if we do that, and then I can put a semi here, and then let's see what this thing does.
Yeah, I don't know the assert.collection.
I mean, that worked. But I think it's more than just assert true, right? And what happens if these are in the other order?
Try messing it up. Try breaking it.
All right, so I'm just going to flip-flop the order just to see.
Yeah.
And
order really shouldn't matter here.
It does.
Oh, it matters. Okay.
Right, which once again feels weird.
Yeah, so order mattered. Is there an overload on collection where we can tell it order doesn't matter? Because this is basically what we were kind of sort of wanting.
No.
Huh.
No, it's right. This is us inspecting each one of these things, right? So each one of these is an inspection on applied to each element. Weird.
Yeah, that's very strange.
That doesn't feel as valuable to me.
Let me see what Google says.
To the Google, the Oracle of Google.
Yes. Collection share.
Let's see. While you're looking at that, I want a chat widget that respects moderation but allows links to be submitted for moderation. You do have that in Twitch. Twitch does do that. Let's see what else we have here. Playing with scissors. I once said something and I got a message in chat saying something like your message was not sent, waiting for a mod to approve it. Yes. Is there something waiting for me as a mod? No. Stack Overflow 438. Blech. What is that? Stack Overflow.
Oh, hey, that's funny. MS Test has a collection assert.r equivalent, which does exactly what we want.
Aha! MS Test is amazing. No,
but I need to find the XUnit equivalent.
Well, stackoverflow.com questions paste. Let's see, what do we got here? Page not found. That doesn't exist.
Looks like it's in NUnit the exact same way as MS Test.
Yeah, let's come back to that.
I don't see it next unit.
Yeah. All right, we'll come back to this.
Yeah.
We're doing what we need for right now.
Yeah. What is there today does solve the problem. We understand that that is all really one assertion. It's make sure this is the collection that came back. It just took us 5 asserts to verify it. That could be 5 if statements, if you like, that return back a Boolean and we do an assert true. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Clearly, Jeff was right. We're done here.
We're done here. Nothing to see. Move along. All right, get rid of that. So, all right. So we've got this over here. Looking back at the event, this feels like we're testing. We've pinned this feature properly, so I'm good with that. And it didn't rename my class file. That feels bad.
Yeah, why isn't it getting that?
I don't know. All right. This one, configure service tests. Now this one, okay. So this is actually testing. What is this testing? Execute register stream services with various configurations. Return expected dictionary. No, return expected. Okay, this is testing to make sure that the actual stream services are being properly registered. Yeah. Interesting. So these were tests that somebody else submitted, right? And it's creating a fake configuration. Now, where's that being referenced? 4 references. Right here. Okay, so these configurations are being used here as the member data being passed into the method. All right, so, and that's the dictionary being passed in. Type expected. It's expecting an array of types. Am I reading that right? Service collection, build service provider, assert are equal expected provider get services. Yeah, okay, hang on. So it's passing in that configuration, and here's the type that it's expecting.
And then grabs the type off of the services. Yeah, okay. Yep, that makes sense.
Okay. But it's returning an array of... Oh, because it configured... Why is it expecting to get 3 services back? When
Twitch, Mixer, and Fake.
Oh, because it's passing in a... here you go. This make configuration is passing in the 3 different IDs. Okay. Whew. All right, let's take a look at this. So this is allocating and saying set up the configuration for the 3 services with this Twitch service client ID, with this Mixer client ID, and true, yes, enable the fake service. Okay.
Talk about needing constants for those magic strings.
You know what? We're not actually inspecting those. So I'm okay, I think. What I would like to do is, I think we need to rename this internal. Fake configuration is, I think we're confusing with our fake service. I think we want to call this stub configuration.
Sure.
All right, so I'm going to F2 and change that to stub. So in that way, right, I'm kind of defining, right, the Twitch ID, the client ID, and then whether or not to enable the fake streaming service. So then this is taking in the collection of these things. That's fine. We don't care. I agree. These are magic strings, but I don't really care about them. I just care that they're there for the purpose of lighting up the service. Right, so what this is really testing, this one method here, is testing that if we do pass in a Twitch ID, it enables the Twitch service. If we do pass in a Mixer ID, we are enabling the Mixer service. And if we do pass in, if we do say to enable the fake service, that we enable the fake service. So
really we're testing to make sure that it enables the requested services.
Right, and it disables them when it doesn't.
Yes.
Staker says, I would use options into the stream service instead of the configuration. This way we do not need magic strings. I'm not quite sure I follow that.
Yeah, I think these are the IDs that it's using. Let's tackle this first. Let's get things fixed up here so that we can make sense out of it, and then we can figure out if we want to restructure it all, like Staker's suggesting.
Okay.
But step 1, let's get it so that we understand what we're doing here. So we said configure service tests, but really what we are doing is this is configure services.execute. So why don't we say configure services should?
Okay.
And then.
So here, I'm going to try and do an F2 on this and see if it renames the file for me. Rename will update one reference in one file, but will it rename the file?
Yeah, I'm not sure it will. I don't have confidence.
Nope, didn't.
So this is a case where when I have certain design patterns with, things like my class really only has one method, and it's like an execute. So like maybe you're using a rules pattern or a command pattern or something like that, where there's really only one entry point into your class. Really, in this case, it's configure services is what we're doing, even though the method is named execute, because having a class named execute should is basically like, okay, like execute what?
Yeah. All right. So, good, I got time. So
yeah, we got a little bit. So configure services should, and then we say execute, but I want to, I like what we said, enable and disable services, or.
Right. So, and to be clear, let's look at the startup services, and then configure services is the name of my class, and it has one method in it called execute.
Yep.
So everything else is private underneath this.
Yep.
So part of me says I don't care about the word execute because this is a command pattern.
Yep. Precisely.
So I want to get rid of that as part of the name.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. And so this says register stream services with various configurations. I would say maybe with specified configurations.
Okay.
Right? Because
we're passing in a collection of configurations.
Yeah. register stream services with specified configurations, and then it says return expected, but I mean, I think we kind of get that when we have like
return enabled.
Are we returning from execute? We're not returning from execute.
No, we're not. We're
so
registering.
I wouldn't even say that. Yeah, because that's just how we're confirming it right there.
Okay.
Is that we're checking that? So I wouldn't even put in a return here. We could say the given, but I don't think there is one for this test. It's like because we said specified.
Right. I don't think we have a given. Our given is the member data because this is a theory.
Correct. Yep. And it's going to change. So we could say given various configurations, but that seems kind of like self-explanatory.
Okay.
Right. The other nice thing is, you know, when you use these different types of data, most test runners, not that I can confirm on this one, that is the preview, will break out an individual row for each of your possible data sets that you're using. So if you're using inline data or member data or anything like that, you'll get a row for each test
entry. So
yes.
A techie thought has a good point there. Let's not call it with specified configurations. Let's call it with valid configurations.
Ah, yes, good.
And this is under configure services should. So it's down here. So if I open this one up.
Why don't we say instead of with, say for. So register the stream services for the valid configurations.
Okay.
Because only those ones are the ones that get it. So yeah, I like that.
So now we see the 4 entries that were run coming out of those configurations. Should the configurations be right? These various combinations of enabled, disabled. Wow. Is it not a thing to test for failures? These all seem to inject valid inputs.
Yes, we do want to test for failures also.
I agree. I would like to test.
Part of the challenge is you also only want to send in things that, you know, that you expect to ever be possible also, because there is a line there that you want to draw. You got to remember that we're not doing QA testing with these. That's a separate beast, and that is also very important. But, you know, we just want to handle the expected cases, because otherwise we could be here, you know, for a week just adding more tests of like, well, what if it has this, or what about this, or what about this, and we could just keep going forever.
There's a point where it's no longer valuable.
Yeah. So I like to try and make sure there's something where you get an unexpected, or, you know, just make sure you handle that. But I usually like to keep that to 1 or 2, you know, of whatever the most likely thing is we expect. So that's like a make sure you handle the null case. Make sure you handle, you know, oh, we got, you know, letters instead of numbers or something like that. Yeah, playing with scissors is right. There are diminishing returns as you keep adding these.
Yep. So I just added one that says, you know what, don't enable anything.
Yep.
And return an empty collection. And we can see that it did properly run that test. Now, does it actually show me what that collection was that was passed in? Ugh. It's too far over. What happens if I copy that?
Additionally, with a lot of internal classes, so things that are just run within your system and aren't taking user input, a lot of times you can sort of expect certain possibilities aren't going to come up as frequently. So things like, oh, we're never going to get a null for this, because that's always coming from, you know, some service.
Yeah. So here's the full the full entry for each one of those, and gosh, look at all that stuff that it's passing in.
Yeah, standby reloading, there are definitely some points where a test isn't really needed, and you just ended up with like, I just tested the same thing happened. But there are other times where it's like, oh yeah, let's make sure it really did these pieces.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't need to go and test every little instance of this, right? I could do just the very simple, well, only turn on the first one, only turn on the second one, and then only turn on the third one, and then turn on all three and turn off all three, right? I could do those. Well, I guess that would be 6 different tests, 6 different scenarios,
Yep.
and that would work.
So the time when you end up with a lot of extra tests where you do like the full things are when it's really easy to just add in other iterations like what we've got here. So
Yeah.
once you have a test case set up and you can just add another one, it's pretty easy to put another one in.
So if I just got rid of that one, flip this one to false, right, then I can do my first test just to make sure that I get a Twitch service and that the other 2 were not created.
Yep.
And then I can restructure the second one so we're just testing for Mixer. Right, and then just for fake, and then there's the full empty, and then let's do the full. Now, this feels brittle only in the sense that, excuse me, when the next service comes along, when the YouTube service comes along, am I really going to put? Am I really going to set this up so that I have another set of these that turns on and turns off YouTube appropriately?
That is the challenge, is how far down the rabbit hole do you go? Do you add it for everyone? The other thing that's going to get us a little bit here is if we are getting into that, like, do you even add the YouTube once or not at all?
Well, so, right, this is where, what are we really testing? We're testing that it conditionally creates that service appropriately. So, doing this, check and see which ones of these that it lights up. I think make stub configuration it works for our 3 services that we have today. But we could probably get away a little bit simpler if we just made Twitch configuration, made Mixer configuration, made fake configuration, and then done.
Yep. Also, a techie thought, I do like your suggestion of changing to streaming providers instead of services, just because services is such a loaded word in software already.
So the reason I chose to call it a stream service is because it gets registered as a hosted service by ASP.NET Core. So it's not a provider in the traditional sense because it hangs out there as a hosted service. It's running on its own thread and listening. You still would like to call it provider?
I mean, we don't have to change it. I'm good either. I'm good either way. It's just one of those things. We use the word service so frequently in development.
Oh yeah. Right. If I did rename this to not iHosted service, I can't rename that one. If I rename this one to iStream provider.
We should, before messing with any of that, we should probably get committed.
I was going to say, there's going to be, how many, look at this, 20 references and 11 files. Oh, baby.
Yeah, let's not do that.
I would break each service curation into a separate test method and then might still need to validate it if it's still configured properly multiple. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Can you do tests over a range of inputs? Like if it was a valid test to make sure the next X dates should produce errors. That feels a little bit like what Pex and Moles used to do. Right? Remember those tools? So they would analyze your code and find the boundary conditions and then write unit tests, generate unit tests for those. Let's commit what we've got, though. I think you made a good point there. What are the files that I'm looking at here? And I'm going to be bad. I know, that's so terrible of me. started following
we all do that from time to time.
There we go. Cool. Git push.
Now, what we don't all do is, then commit without actually looking at any of the changes. But,
What? I know what the changes were.
yeah, exactly. All of them. Every line of change, every line of code changed. It's all up there.
All right. All right. So we're happy with this, and we've renamed a couple of these other things, and I'm actually just about out of time here. But I'm pretty happy with the changes that we've made to simplify and start following at least a standard for how these things should go. We didn't get into viewer count by service, but I know how this should go now, right?
Exactly.
We've to summarize. Let me open a notepad here.
So the other trick is getting especially when you're changing something like this, is the discipline to follow through and actually get them all converted to the new naming scheme, which would mean every time you jump into any one of these, you work on fixing it a little. So you can either do it as one, like in this case where we are, this is small solution still, we could pretty easily go in and change every one of those named pieces, get it to the new standard, and we'd be pretty good. And we could apply Fluent Assertions, make those changes, and make everything the way we want it. Pretty easy. If you're in a larger code base, you want to take a disciplined approach, make sure the whole team is on board, everybody understands the new convention, how it's going to work, and then just say, hey, anytime you're writing a new one, follow the new convention, and if you're updating an old one, apply it as well. And then that way, at the end, when you're going through, like as you get close to being done, you can just do a quick check through and make that change.
Okay. So the naming standard we're looking at for the unit tests, right? Create a folder for each logical class.
Yep.
Create a test class for each feature to test. Skull Crusher for life. Thank you for joining us. Go gentle on us. And good morning, Steve. I haven't acknowledged our buddy Steve there. Okay. This should end with right, should. So we don't end up repeating should everywhere.
Yeah, we didn't underscore prefix it, but yeah.
Yeah, oh, you're right. Do that. And then
if you like underscore prefixing, totally works.
Sure. And then the methods inside that, test methods, should describe what they are inspecting.
And what they're given, if anything.
If anything. Ending with underscore given and then whatever it is.
The other thing I would specify is like I would give examples on those if I were, say, putting this in your README, for example, which you might be doing.
Maybe.
And the examples would be something along the lines of like a, return the total, given multiple entries or something like that.
So I'm just going to grab what we have right here, right? Stream service dot current follower count should dot match current follower count given one service.
Yeah, so what I like about that one is it's a property, so we're saying match because it's almost that it's a value in itself. But then an example of another one, we might say, return something given something else, right?
Sure.
We don't have an example of that, but that kind of illustrates, in the case where it's a property, we're saying it should match this. In the case of this method, we're saying it should return this value. And although the register one would be a good one, that name that we used illustrates nicely how we're verbing what we're doing.
Did that announcement just go out?
Which announcement? Either way, yes, I'm standing. Look. I can jump around. So.
Oh, they did just announce it. Okay. So it is
What
the
did they
7th
announce?
through the 9th. Build is the
Oh,
7th
build.
through the
Cool.
9th. Okay.
I
So
will absolutely not be there. I'm busy.
I will be there. Um, and there were some questions about the exact date and some concerns. That's what the assert is should. I'm talking about the doc, not the code. Do you have a recommended desk that you like?
I think that was sent to me.
Yep.
And there are actually a handful of standing desks that I've used and I like, and I can post a link probably in chat. I think I'm allowed.
Yeah. Let me double check on Nightbot. I think I have you on the list. No, I don't have you on the list. You are right like that. There you go.
There are a lot of good ones. I use a hand crank one. I can adjust it to exactly the height that I need at any given time, but I switch between standing and walking on a treadmill, so I need, height adjustments even as the only person that uses it.
So, and somebody was saying that standard feels like something you're going to enforce and you're going to get angry at. I could see changing this to be guidelines. Then it's more like the pirate code. It's more like a guideline. So, right, but then if we have standards, if we have guidelines, right, then we could write analyzers to help kind of enforce and nudge in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, cool.
Yeah, so you got to be a little careful with that, just because there are some cases where we don't match the convention exactly because
Sure.
it doesn't make sense to. We always have to be able to be flexible on these. Like, for example, our execute was not we didn't want to call execute should because that class name didn't seem specific enough.
Yeah, this one was right. It's the only method that's in there. It's right. Execute is the only method that's on this class, and we do have something that we are given here, and we are arranging here. So maybe there should be a given, but I'm okay with there not being one in this case. But, well, I think we need to wrap it up there. Git plugin for Notepad, that's funny. So, yeah, all right. Anything else we want to say about some of the structures, some of the ways that we changed up how our unit test worked here, Brendan?
I mean, not too much. I know we did want to talk about your other project at some point, but the main thing I like is just the clarity we get here in the name, and that it gets us some good focus. The other thing that I want to talk about at some point is as you get further in and you start testing more similar things, like once we get wider here, we talked about the concept that we need to actually maintain this code like it's real code, because guess what? This is real code. It's not the deployed to production code, but we have to maintain it just the same.
Oh, yeah.
So things like extracting out logic. So
putting together a base class for some of these things.
Yes, it comes up sometimes. Occasionally, if you have, say, two methods that are kind of complicated and they're in the same class, and you're like, hey, I've got 8 different tests, just on this one class, but they're split into 2 different test fixtures, we'll call them. Then it's like, oh, but actually some of the configuration for how we set that up is the same.
Yeah.
Because, maybe I needed to pass in my iStream services when I created my object. And so it's like, oh, that's the same thing. Why are we, doing that separately? It just kind of makes sense to have a base class that did the configuration and the setup for each of the tests, so they all share it, so it's not repeated.
Right. So that's why I started a base fixture that would handle and do some of my mock setup for me. So if I had to use a mock, well, here it is. But we got that great contribution that says, you know what, move that completely out. and let's put that into a auto fixture attribute here, so it's completely hidden off to the side.
Yep.
And I feel like these attributes here for auto fixture, I almost want to take those and let me collapse that up. I almost want to take these three and put them almost into an infrastructure folder, so that they're not visible right off the top, and they look like they're tests or something that's doing a test. I mean, heck, why don't we just do that now? Why am I even saying I want to? Just do it, Jeff. New folder. Right, and if I call this infrastructure, like that, then I can just put all 4 of these in there. I don't care. Do it. So now it's kind of hidden, and it's behind my folders.
Playing with scissors forgot the kappa emote on that.
Now you need to make your tests, but make sure to make them in real code. Yes. All right, cool. I am going to commit those changes.
Let me guess. Git add dot git commit.
I don't. So there was a question earlier. Why don't I use the Visual Studio interface for GitHub to commit? I like using the command line. I was told at one point that real developers use the command line. Whatever works for you. I've just become accustomed to using Git at the command line, so that's my preference. So, refactored, no, not refactored, created an infrastructure folder. Structure, yeah, folder. That's not how you spell folder.
Yeah, it's one of the things with Git. Everybody uses a different setup for it. I do all my committing inside of the GitHub app, but then I do everything that's not, looking at diffs and committing, I do entirely in the command line.
Yes, I prefer to use Visual Studio Code to do my diff. If I know how to do it at the command line, then oh, look at this. Now run git diff. And he wants me to go after head _1 to review my changes. So it did my rename. And, yep, rename, right? So I never review that stuff. I kind of expect that the stuff I committed is what I committed. You know? So, cool. All right.
Good stuff.
It is. So thank you so much for your help. That's all the time we have for today. I will, of course, archive this over to YouTube, so you'll see a link pop out on Twitter a little bit later today. I'm going to take this little bit of notes that I wrote down about naming guideline for unit tests. I'm going to drop this into the README section of the Stream Tools project right there on GitHub, so that folks can see, here's how we want to structure and name our unit tests. What? I missed it? Yes, Max. Sorry, we started about 2 hours ago. But, fortunately, there is a video on demand that you'll be able to watch. So, I will copy this out and put this on the docs for the project. We'll have the YouTube video up in a little bit. Thanks so much, everybody, for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Brendan, for joining me today. This was a lot of fun, and I feel better about how my unit tests are named and organized a little bit, because I felt like they were a mess. So, thank you. All right. That's all the time I have. We'll see you next time. It'll be Saturday morning, and I got a little prod from one of our friends out there on Twitter saying, hey, why don't you check out Blazor on stream? So I think we're going to look at the Blazor project on Saturday morning. So tune in Saturday or check out the YouTube video later that day, and I'll see you then. Take care, everybody.